One in a million, 1% of American, and one of a kind. Many people who met me before describe me differently, but one thing is for certain, they never met someone like me before. Many people wonder who I became, who I am today, and how I overcame some of the challenges that I faced in my life. One of the challenges was being an orphan. I never knew my parents. And before I turned 11, I went through 7 different foster care and facility. At age 11, I was adopted to America. I had this dream and hope that my life will be better, just like every other child, that I wanted to worry about the homework and getting a stress from getting a bad grade. But life had another twist in my life. I soon find out that my parents who adopted me did not adopt me out of love or charity, but rather they want to have an unconditional, unpaid worker. From the second day I was there to the last day, I had to work to basically survive to get a meal. And age 18, I decided to leave the house for good, for my own happiness, never look back behind. Yes, life was bad, but I had to look forward. I wanted to look forward to see what life could offer to me. That's when I met my Marines recruiter. I walked into the office when they were looking for females to ship out to Paris Island. I didn't have a choice, and I didn't have anywhere else to go, so why not? I wanted to sign up for it. In the winter time, I went into Paris Island, and when the spring came, I became a Marine who was about to go first to duty station, which was in Japan. When I checked into my first duty station, I was the only Asian and only females in my unit. Whether I wanted or not, I had to be cultural advisors for everybody who was left and right. Luckily, I always had this identity question about who I was and how to be Asian American in America, so I consistently reach out internet to talk to people who might have a similar problem as I did. And I also talked to people who was international students from Japan to find out how to behave in Japan before I came to Japan. So that's why I was able to help out those people who was left and right, and I could able to do cultural advisors. Then on March 11, 2011, the earthquake in Tohoku happened. It was one day after I came back from Hawaii. Sergeant Major was looking for someone who could speak just a little bit of Japanese, and I was the only one he had. So I had to run as fast as I could. C-130 was leaving within 20 minutes, and I didn't have a choice. I don't think I can still run that fast in my life. I think it was the first time and the last time I ran that fast. So within 20 minutes, I got onto the C-130, and within 2 hours, I was in Sendai. Due to risk of radiation, C-130 dropped us and just left. So it literally felt like 15 Marine versus nature. And with the vehicle, nothing but covered by dust, and maybe radiation, who knows? So I was assigned to shower unit. Our mission was to build a shower for people who lost everything at the city center. When I checked into the city center, people were afraid of us. And it was my first time being a non-traditional, non-professional interpreter. So I brought my dictionary with me, but I realized dictionary was not what I needed. People need love and care and support. And dictionary cannot provide that. So I did my best to connect with the people there. And one night, I walked around this city center, and I was guarding the places and protecting these places. And I saw this one girl who made a desk out of a cardboard box. She was studying at the city center. When I asked her what she was doing, she said she was studying for her education. She wanted to continue her education when she go back to the school. When I saw her, I could not let her study by herself. I had to do something. So we, 3 Marines and myself, decided to volunteer English class for City Center. And now that I think about this, I think the English class was more than just English classes for us. For children, it was only opportunity that they could be children again during this disaster time. And for us, it was a time to relax, to forget about all this like horrible scene and horrible story that we saw during the day. We could finally relax in the disaster. Sometimes when you go through this disaster time, you don't need fancy things to remind you you will be okay. You just need people who go through similar problem and similar background to remind you that you will be okay or we will be okay. So when I came back from this operation, I decided to open up the English class for orphanage and immigrant children. Once again, I was in the orphanage, and I was an orphan. So I wanted to remind myself where I came from, but also I wanted to give it back to those people that not have enough resources in their life. But I realized I graduated high school with a 2.1 GPA out of 4.0. So I had an idea, but I was out of shape to provide an English class. Now some of you wonder how I was able to offer this English class at the back in the city center with a 2.1 GPA. Well, luckily we didn't have enough material to teach. We based on conversation English. So I didn't have to worry about grammar or any other word, but just conversation. I realized I was out of shape, so I decided to study for 1 year to English class, to retake my English class, to refreshing my education so I can provide those education to people. And 1.5 years later, I finally passed the English class that was a middle school education level. And it was a little shame, and I was a little late, but I did pass. So I started to giving a volunteer English class in the orphanage to let children to know they are not forgotten. But I also wanted to give them opportunities so they could learn as much as other children too. While I was doing this, I also volunteered like a mentor for immigrant children. I wanted to make sure that, especially for immigrant children that who was about to get adopted, because I went through a hard time in my adoption, I wanted to make sure that other people did not have to go through. So I provided my personal story to a counselor and city center and make sure they could investigate parents a little more deeply. I wanted to make sure my failing story, my failing adoption story could be someone else's success story. Yes, I was bad. Yes, I was unfortunate enough not to have good parents, but it doesn't mean other people could not have. Maybe my experience can make someone else's experience better. Came to Japan for the second time for English, for the educations, I decided to start looking into minority and immigrant in Japan. Because once again, I was the only Asian American person in my class, and I was the only Asian in my department, American in my department. And recently, I met these two famous writers that born and raised out of overseas, but was educated in Japan and wrote their book in Japanese. They point out that not many Japanese people knew what minority and immigrants goes through because they were never introduced to them. Yes, we have this new immigrant policies opening for immigrants to come into Japan, and my favorite player, Osaka Naomi, representing Japan in the world. But it's only happening on top of level of a society, and it's only in the bigger city. When you go into the smaller city, we still have this problem of understanding minority and immigrants. And I started to wonder how I could provide my experience and how to help others to understand people like us, people who were born without chances. And I realized standing in here in front of you today on this stage to share my experience, to share my story could be one of the ways to introduce. So, yes, it was, so the minority life in Japan is still hard as before. And of course, with my experience in here is also hard as well. But by providing a mentor, a strong mentor and strong example of to follow, maybe their life could be heard, their story could be heard to the other people, as I am today delivering my life to you. So one of a writer that I met actually said, she said, accepting being a minority in Japan is like coming out from the closet. And I think it's true. To finding out where we fit in our society is hard. But when you're a minority and immigrants, it's a triple harder than everybody else. And the things that you consider to be normal are not normal to those people. So today's topic is to find a new path of our society. But what is the point of finding a new path if we cannot understand where we're coming from? And we need new people and new group of people to walk onto the new paths to get a new, better society. At the beginning of my speech, I said 1 in a million, 1% of American, and one of a kind. I am 1 of a million by being an orphan and immigrant and adopted. And most people see success adoption story in TV, and not many people hear about the failing adoption story. But I am the survivor of failing adoption story, which make me 1 of a million. I am also 1% of American by being an Asian American women who serve in the military, being an Asian American women's veteran. And which all those categories makes me one of a kinds to make me stand out. I actually never knew what I could do in my life until someone reminded me. Until I joined the military, until the chances were given to me, I did not know what I could do in life. I think that is similar within our society too. If you're never given a chance to do what you can do, or remind you that you can be one of the persons that like other people too, you will never find out what you can do, what you are capable of doing. I think our first step to opening up the road and opening up the path is to understand the people with a different background. And from there, we can move forward and make a better society. Thank you.